Welcome once again, combat sports fans. This is DAZN MMA. Sean O'Connell here. I kicked Dan Hardy off the show, at least for today. But I did so because I wanted a little FaceTime with the big boss. Special guest, the man with the plan, the big brains behind the operation, the president of the Professional Fighters League, Peter Murray, to talk all things in combat sports after a huge weekend. Pete, welcome to the show. How are you?
John, great to see you. Nice to be here with DAZN.
It was a big weekend, right? We had our PFL playoffs in San Antonio, and then the crossover event of the mixed martial arts and boxing year as Jake Paul boxed against Nate Diaz right here on DAZN. We'll get to our PFL playoffs. I want to get there, obviously, but there were some big announcements that came out of this Diaz Paul boxing event. Some things that pertain to us in the PFL, obviously. But you were there. You were, in the arena. I know you've been a big combat sports fan, big boxing, big MMA fan for a long time. This felt, watching from a distance, like it was one of those big nights in boxing that, I don't know, they've been fewer and further between in the sport. You were there. Was it the atmosphere that I'm thinking it was?
It was an iconic event. And Jake Paul, he's really blazing his own trail and making his mark on boxing and taking all opponents at a high level. And I thought the performance, both athletes, Jake and Nate, it was a great night. The atmosphere was electric, sold out show, so much energy, and it was a battle. It was a battle. And what we're excited about is not only, Jake representing and, he won the fight, obviously, but that next fight is what we're excited about. The next chapter, settling the score in the cage. And, we had presented, Nate Diaz a 2-fight deal to have that second fight, that rematch, be an MMA bout, a PFL Super Fights event. And we're looking forward to planning out those details for 2024.
The fight was great. It was exciting in times. You get the knockdown from Jake. You get really early dominance from Jake. And then Nate, as a lot of people expected, because this is how his MMA career has gone, right? A bit of a slow starter, but then just the attrition of having to try and put that guy away. And then he has his moments later in the fight. He even locked in a guillotine temporarily to throw a little showmanship into it. Ultimately, Jake takes down the decision that a lot of people thought he would. Is that the outcome that you were sitting there kind of hoping for at the end of the day that sets up the storyline for that MMA rematch?
I think, hey, number one, obviously we're in Jake's corner. Two, we want to see a great fight, and it was. Every round was interesting, and how each athlete were going after it. And so, listen, it went down, I think, the way we would have potentially scripted, and on the heels of just the decision, they're talking about the next fight in the cage. So that's all we care about. It was a great W for Jake, and now what we're excited about as an MMA organization, the rematch.
What's the timeline, you think, on that rematch? When does Pete Murray want to make that rematch in the Smart Cage happen?
Listen, if we're up to me, we'd do it in 90 days. But I think sometime next year. So, it'll take some planning, with Jake and with Nate. And it's not done yet. But the good news is both of the athletes seem, interested to make it happen. And, we'll see. But more to come on those details.
You know more than I, but it seems like Jake Paul's so far been a great partner for the PFL, right? Puts the name out there, talks about the PFL, represents in a scenario where all eyes are on him, talks about, hey, let me get this rematch in mixed martial arts in the Professional Fighters League, right? Putting the company's name out there. But he's always got his hands in his, there's always other things going on. He's always calling out other people in boxing, and he wants to fight other pro boxers. He's talking about Canelo. How do you dial in someone like that to say, all right, you better start training mixed martial arts because he's been focused on boxing and improved in boxing pretty dramatically. I don't think even his most stringent haters out there, I don't think can say that he's a bad boxer at this point because he's put in the work. But he's going to have to do the same thing in mixed martial arts, especially if he wants to meet a timeline of next year.
Yeah, well, number one, hey, we partnered with Jake because his voice and huge advocate for combat fighters, men and women. It really aligns with who what the PFL is all about and our values. That's number one. Two, he's got a massive platform as a result of his voice and what he's accomplished today, both as an athlete and in the entertainment and influencer space. And the opportunity to partner with him and help usher him into the sport of MMA, supporting his journey. And really that's our focus. And so, and providing Jake all the flexibility in the world, like Francis, to box and not have MMA conflict with that, provided, he and they, meaning Francis and Jake, are committed to competing and focusing on MMA. And that's the case with both of them. And for Jake, he's taken on this sport. It is new. He is training, I could tell you that much, and more to come on, when and how he's going to pivot, in preparation for his debut in the sport.
You mentioned the way that he's helped advance, not just himself, but men and women in the sport of boxing. And now someone who's kind of on that Jake Paul train, right? Amanda Serrano, who's been represented and been on his cards, signed with the PFL. This is huge. She is one of the best female strikers on planet Earth. Obviously, the other one that falls in that category, Claressa Shields, is already in the PFL fold. So here you are gobbling up the great combat sports athletes on the female side of things.
Yeah, we're excited. About the women in MMA who are now turning to MMA from combat sports, including boxing. And you're talking the best of the best champions at the highest level in boxing. Claressa, greatest woman all time, 2-time Olympic gold medalist in U.S. I believe she holds 4 belts today. You talk about, Amanda. We're really, really excited about that signing last week, and she's definitely had some experience in MMA, and she's again, one of the best, and she's at the highest level, in boxing. And to take on another sport's not easy, as you know, and it's very humbling. But just to see Claressa take it on, and now we have the opportunity to support Amanda in the sport. It's fantastic. And what I could tell you, we have another major signing coming from women in combat sports that we'll be making in the coming weeks that I think sets us up really, really nicely.
Pete, just between me and you, I won't tell anyone else. Who are we talking about there with that major signing?
More to come. More to
Well, what is the latest on Claressa Shields? She told us, even though she was upset about the loss in MMA, she said, "You will see me back. I am not done here." So what's the latest with Claressa?
Latest with Claressa is she's now going to focus on MMA, and she understands after 2 fights, as you mentioned, she won her debut in the sport. She lost her second fight. She had a great year, in boxing, the Savannah Marshall fight, and the last fight, she won the Boxer of the Year, the ESPYs. No woman has ever done that before, and so many other accolades that she's absolutely earned in boxing. And in a recent conversation, she said to me, she now wants to take, her focus on MMA, making it a priority, to the next level. And you'll be seeing Claressa in the cage, if all goes well, early next year on our first pay-per-view card in February or March on our Super Fights division.
I love it. Staying with the Super Fights, and you already mentioned his name, Francis Ngannou, the biggest free agent signing in the history, not only of the PFL, but you can make an argument the biggest free agent signing in the history of the sport of mixed martial arts. Obviously, the deal was completely unique and totally momentous. And one aspect of that deal was it would allow Francis to pursue a fight that a lot of people thought he would never be able to sign. He would never be able to convince Tyson Fury to put all of his reputation and everything at risk to fight a mixed martial artist. And now that fight is happening in October. Francis Ngannou, Tyson Fury, you and I have yet to actually get to speak about this. How big is this for Francis, for the PFL, and really for combat sports overall?
Yeah, Sean. I mean, you said it. It was a massive signing for the PFL. Francis being the #1 heavyweight champion in the world, and also, an athlete with a point of view on, how he wants to shape his career, and similar to Jake Paul, it aligned with our priorities. We're launching the pay-per-view division with the best. And the biggest names. So check there, and Francis always focused on boxing. That event against Tyson is going to be pretty exciting in October. He's ready to get back into the cage, I assure you, and we're working on the opponent. So Francis to the PFL at this stage of our company, he's an anchor to launch pay-per-view. Our super fights division, #1, 2. He's an anchor in launching PFL Africa as the chairman of PFL Africa. And that International Regional League will launch officially in 2025 competition, executing, distributing, those fights. 2025 could think of no better leader at the chairman level than Francis Ngannou on the continent. And then, #3, Francis is an anchor as part of the PFL's Global Athlete Advisory Board, helping us to maintain our course as a fighters first organization, identifying future champions, recruiting and developing talent. So it really is a threefold partnership, super unique, I think, in all of sports, not just MMA. But we're really excited to be in business with Francis.
You mentioned that, you're working on the opponent for Francis. And this has been one of the things that people talk to me about all the time. Congratulations, you guys signed Francis. Who are you going to have Francis fight? Right. Sure. And then the immediate sort of sentiment is always one of negativity. Like, well, now you guys got to prove to us you can give us something that we actually want to watch. And this has been going on. And look, you know better than I, because you're the one who has to build this company, and I just get to talk about the fights. But your perspective on how many times people are saying, well, prove it to me, prove it to me, prove it to me, when the PFL continues to prove it over and over and over again, does it ever get frustrating where you're like, dude, just believe in me? We've proven it to you many times. No. You didn't think we could get Francis. You didn't think Francis could get Tyson Fury. How many times do you have to prove it, Pete?
Well, you got to prove it every day, Sean, and you know that. And as an early stage company, I mean, we're just 5 years old, and it started with a vision, and then a unique format for the fans and opportunities for fighters. So like job one was to establish the PFL and its format. And we did that early days. And then it's a matter of building trust with fighters and the fighter community, right? That we can deliver. We can support the athlete. We can deliver those fights consistently. We can pay those athletes. We can pay them more, give them more incentive, et cetera. And year over year, we've seen our roster improve, right? We've proven that we can support, develop stars, as well as recruit stars year over year. And so it really is a matter of setting our goals on the fighter side, in terms of how we're assessing talent within the PFL, how we look at the criteria going forward to improve the roster. And I'm really proud of what the team has built. But, as it relates to Francis, and whether it's the sports media, endemic MMA media, or even some fans, we're a challenger brand. We're a disruptor of the sport. But here's what I could tell you. We're good for fighters, because we provide fighters now around the world at different stages of their career. Top competition, right? On major media platforms distributed globally, and the opportunity to earn more. And we go back to this phrase a lot because it really comes from the fighters. We give them the ability to manage their careers, unlike any other organization where they can plan, they know who they're fighting, when they're fighting, what they're fighting for. What do you fight for is on the steps of the PFL's cage for a reason, and it will forever be there. And it's really, it's number one, we're there to support the fighters, and so competition's good. Media companies around the world as well, they now have a global leader in the PFL. We're providing premium, innovative, year-round now events. This year, we executed 24 events. I'm sorry, 22 with Challenger Series, the season product, and PFL Europe. Next year, well, 30 events. And so with the launch of pay-per-view and the continuation of PFL Europe, and next year, another thing I can't share here, Sean, we will be launching our second regional league in 2024. We haven't announced where that's going to be. That's coming very soon, but it's already done. It's already, all the details are squared away in our partnerships. But next year, 30 events. And that just brings me back to like proving ourselves. And as long as we're solving something for the fighters, our athletes who are partners, 2, media companies, and 3, ultimately fans. Fans will be the judge. And, I think when you look at our growth, fans have said, we love the PFL. And we're not asking UFC fans to choose one versus the other. That's not what this is about. This is a massively underserved fan base, 640 million fans, 80% outside the US, youngest fan base of all traditional sports, and they're underserved. How many basketball games are on, in a year? NCAA plus NBA, it's like 6,000. Talk about how many soccer or football matches around the world. You think about the amount of events that the UFC produces and distributes. It's not a wholesome year-round calendar. And so the way we look at it is, we really want to super serve this fan. We want to grow, right? Advance the sport, and make sure, there's there's year-round action at the highest level and solving for something. But, we have something to prove in building the global powerhouse that we're building. But ultimately, it goes back to fans, media companies, and fans.
We're in playoff season with PFL Global, right? We're heading into the playoffs in Paris for our first regional league. And by the way, the playoffs in fact, the championship matchups are set at light heavyweight and men's featherweight. 3 of those 4 guys that qualified for a championship bout came from the Challenger Series, which is another property that you built, right? So 3 of the 4 that are fighting for $1 million came from our own homegrown farm system, scouting system,
right.
if you will.
And it is a system, and the systems work. This sport lacks a system, globally. And so, again, going back to the Champions League of MMA, which is what we are building and executing against today. Again, this year, mentioned, we launched PFL Europe successfully. Next year, we'll launch our second regional PFL International League. And we'll launch then 2 additional in 2025 and 2025. And then the remaining 2 in 2026. So, there will be, PFL Middle East, PFL Australia, PFL Africa, as I touched on, Latin America, Asia, and how we segment those different territories. But it's on. And all I could tell you is we really start with assessing the caliber of talent in athletes. And in every part of the world, hope is the strategy of the athlete, and that's what we're solving for. They don't have many viable options to be supported as professional athletes. And so we come in to put resources in place, infrastructure, create a system, and support them properly as professional athletes.
It's so funny because you're absolutely right. I've been through this. As a fighter, you hope that you can get the attention of a big organization. And if you do, great. And if you don't, too bad for you, right? But I've also been part of the traditional sports. We know how it works to be a professional baseball player, right? You go, you fight your way through the farm system, and then you get your call up. We just talked about the Champions League and how that works, the European academies and all that stuff. American football is the biggest thing we got in the United States. You want to be an NFL player, you better go play for a top university. You probably now have to play for a top high school to get to one of those top universities. So you know what the system is for everybody else. And now one exists for mixed martial arts. I'm curious the role you view the global season playing in kind of this grand picture, because obviously Challenger Series feeds into that. I think that the regional leagues will feed into that. The super fights division feels like kind of a crown jewel that's being launched. But the bread and butter, my favorite thing, because I was able to win a season, is that format, that real sports format in mixed martial arts. Do you envision champions of the season potentially having an opportunity to earn fights against people like Francis Ngannou? What role is this season going to play in the full PFL picture in like 2027?
Yeah, listen, the global season is the heart of the company, but that challenge. So if you think about the development of athletes and our system, early stage pros on the come up, right, proving themselves in the Challenger Series, but you're talking about some of the best young fighters in the world that are trying to get into the PFL, those limited roster spots, and proving themselves, and the caliber of fighters so high that, as you said earlier, 3 of our champion 2023 championship fighters came from that system, the Challenger Series. So and while it is a development and farm system, they're some of the best athletes in the world, in that franchise, so to speak, and competing in the series. And then, the league season, that's that next level opportunity to take on a format that I'll need to tell you, Sean, who successfully took it on. You're not only taking on the competition, you're taking on that format. And 4 fights in 8 months to become champion against some of the best. And so, we now have that, but what sits atop is pay-per-view. So of course, fighters have the opportunity now in our system to work their way from the Challenger Series, get into the season, right? In the season, and it could take 1 season, 2 seasons, or 3 seasons, the opportunity to become champion. And if not only, and so you will see certain fighters from our league season migrate onto pay-per-view cards, and perhaps even co-main events of those pay-per-view super fights events. And Kayla Harrison's a great case study and example of that. So, Kayla's now a pay-per-view fighter. We look forward to announcing when she's going to be fighting next. That's coming soon, but she's on our pay-per-view platform. And then those regional leagues also, again, we'll have regional champions of PFL Europe, of PFL Middle East, of PFL Africa, and so on, now have the opportunity to a pathway up to PFL global season. And so it is a system, but what I'll tell you is, although, when I hear farm system, these are proving grounds. And so, sure. But the regional leagues that we are launching around the world are the #1 regional leagues in these regions. So it's the best of Europe, the best athletes who are looking to demonstrate what they have and to earn becoming champion. And then that's another pathway to get up to PFL Global. So while these are, developmental leagues for us for, the global league season and pay-per-view, they are the leading, what I would call, premier MMA organizations in each region that that's launched. We've jumped the line where we, put the flag in because of, our global position in the sport, our brand, our capabilities, our platform, and our ability to put the best fighters in a consistent, league format, and with production value, all the storytelling. So, it's on.
And by the way, if you doubt that, just tune in to PFL Paris on DAZN and tell me when you see Simeon Powell fight and Dakota Ditcheva fight and Ali Taleb fight, tell me that these people can't compete with anyone in the world. Trust me, Pete and Dan and everyone who's done an unbelievable job scouting out the best talent in these regions. It's only going to expand once we get more of these regional leagues. What's the latest on the discussions between the PFL and Bellator?
I just know it's in the papers. Yeah, no.
All right.
Listen,
so
that's as much as I could say on that topic.
That's fine. All right. We did have our first playoff event of the season, as I already mentioned, featherweights and light heavyweights on the men's side. And the storylines that came out of that, obviously, you've got Josh Silveira, who's now fighting Impa Kasanganay in my favorite division, the light heavyweight division. And Impa, in his post-fight interview, after he beats Martin Hamlet with a beautiful knockout, reveals that a year ago he's living in his car, that he was near, a rock bottom kind of situation. Now he's a win away from $1 million. And we've seen the upward mobility that the $1 million prize has provided in the past to fighters, and potentially for fighters who are in this season. As the guy who's like the architect of all this, do you still get to appreciate what that means for a fighter like Impa?
Yeah, Sean. I mean, every fighter who comes in, I mean, we're proud that we have the opportunity to, and I use the word support the phrase supporting their, athlete journeys. And, these fighters, we provide them a platform and an opportunity, and they earn it. And so, to, again, help advance and grow the sport, professionalize it, and then see fighters, like him, get to the championship and, have the ability to, and the opportunity to fight for life-changing money, is amazing. And, year over year, those 6 champions, it's life-changing. They've earned the way. We've provided the platform, and much more to come. Much more to come.
In the featherweight division,
and there it is, Mr. Hardy.
Yeah, Dan Hardy popping in.
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Great. What a great weekend. I was just discussing it with Ariel Helwani.
Yeah, San Antonio, Texas, 105 degrees. We had some great fights.
I loved it. My adrenaline's still right up here from it. I'm buzzing. It was a great event. Yeah.
And go for it.
When you see that featherweight matchup, Bubba Jenkins, who's established in the company, gets upset, and Chris Wade, who's on his 5th try, pretty established as a PFL fighter, gets upset by a Challenger Series undefeated prospect from Brazil. And you've got now a championship, a $1 million championship bout being contested. 2 guys who started the year as relative unknowns, but have firmly proved to everyone they could beat anyone in the world. And they're still in their 20s. I mean, this is the future of the PFL playing out right in front of us.
Future of the sport of MMA, for sure. I mean, what it tells us is, the PFL has some of the greatest fighters on the planet, and there's always challengers that are coming in the mix year over year or season over season to keep the product fresh and take on those champions and top performers, so to speak. But really what it says, it's a capability we have at the PFL with, Ray Sefo and the team and you, Dan, and the team at PFL Europe of, our ability to identify and recruit and develop the best fighters on the planet. It's not just signing. There's a lot of other things that the team is doing to develop, talent. And I think it's super exciting. I mean, the fights are great. And, the great thing about the PFL and the season format is every fight counts, period. Fighters know who they're fighting, when they're fighting, what they're fighting for. It's all on the line. There's a lot of drama to it for the fans. And the Bubba fight, it was a battle, and Bubba displayed so much heart in that fight for sure, but it went the other way, and the better man won on that given day.
It's like a new generation of stars has been born, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like of course, like Moraes and Loughnane and Jenkins are like the statesmen, the elder statesmen. And then we've got these young guys that have come in, Braga and Pinedo, and just blown them out of the water. It's like they've set a new level in this weight class. And the idea of a rematch between the two is just, I mean, I don't even know what to say about it right now. I need to think about it for a couple of hours and try and figure out how it's going to go down, because it's going to be absolute chaos.
And we can make that happen, right? We have the levers to do that, and the plethora of events to, give both those athletes, that opportunity to perhaps, for Bubba to settle that score. We'll see. But, more to come on that. And hey, guys, I'm super excited about finishing off the playoffs here in New York, the PFL's headquarters, MSG Theater. We got our next event, August 18th, a week from this coming Friday. Mm-hmm. And top of that card is that big man, Renan Ferreira, the Brazilian 6'8", eighth wonder of the world. And I'm excited to, see that fight against Maurice. And of course, another Brazilian named Larissa Pacheco. She keeps getting better year over year. That's what I see. I mean, you guys know better than me, in terms of assessing capability. But I think we have not seen the best of Larissa yet.
I agree with you, and she has an opportunity, by the way, this season to become the first two-division champion in the PFL. Obviously, upset Kayla Harrison for the women's lightweight title. Now she's fighting for a women's featherweight opportunity to make it to the championship. It's awesome, and that's kind of why. I mean, it's the number one selling point for me with the PFL. I say, if you know what it's like to watch sports season over season, you can do that in mixed martial arts. Larissa Pacheco tried 3 times, wasn't able to win a championship, and then she broke through. The same way your New England Patriots or your New York Jets or your whoever starts the year hoping that they can win that Super Bowl. Every one of our athletes gets to do that when we hit that reset button and restart the season. It's a beautiful format. We've got great things going. Pete, we've taken up so much of your time today. Thank you.
No, I could talk to you guys all day. I love the expression that I think Randy Couture has. Iron sharpens iron. So now you have our fighters competing against the best. They're getting better. And, they're all disciplined, they're focused. And, on that card, I'm also excited about, we signed an amateur in Biagio Ali Walsh.
Yeah.
And it's been really impressive to see Biagio develop and do it on a really large stage. The spotlight's on him. Spotlights on his brother Nico in boxing with Top Rank. And, Biagio's so poised, so, super focused. And I just can't wait till this kid goes pro. And he and his camp and his team and his family, they don't want to rush it. And I understand that. We support that. But he's getting so good. I think it's a conversation in 2024.
Everyone keeps hinting at the idea that this old guy, Dan Hardy, might be making his comeback in a PFL Smart Cage. I got both of you here, Pete. What do you know about a Dan Hardy comeback?
You have to ask Dan. We support Dan in the cage, of course. So Dan, what are you thinking?
Hey, I'm keen, Pete. I know that people have been asking to fight me. I know I'm very popular to punch in the face, so I'm sure we can find someone that would like to.
I guess more to come on that, but I'd sure like to see, Dan put the mic and headset down in the telestrator and get back after it. So I think in 2024, we'll see if we can make that a possibility.
As long as you make him do both in one night, like I had to do, then I'm on board with that.
I don't recommend that, Dan.
No.
Sean is, exceptional. It worked one time.
It worked one time. Not as well the second time.
I did have a conversation with Sean. If you recall, after you did it, I'm like, you did it. You don't have to prove you can do it again.
Oh, look, I don't blame you for any of that. I only blame myself. The ego is a remarkable thing. It tells you can do things that are not wise to do. But you know what? It was fun. I'm glad I did it both times. And here we are.
Kudos to you. I mean that. And I appreciate our team at DAZN here. Not only being on the show with you guys, but also the partnership we have with DAZN. Obviously, our partner in PFL Europe exclusively, and we'll be doing a lot more things beyond that, including in pay-per-view. So we appreciate the partnership from the whole team at DAZN.
Pete, you're the man. We'll see you in New York. Thanks for your time.
Looking forward to it, guys. All right. And I got some new suits picked out for you. All right. You got it.
That.
Clean
Sounds
up your
good.
you're in New York, play the part. More to come.
Nice.
I love it.
Sounds great. Great talking to you, Pete. Looking forward to New York.